pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, tonight we're going to have some departmental presentations.
Thank you, Mr. President. This evening what we'll have here is the various departments have put a presentation together, a PowerPoint, outlining briefly their programs and services and staffing levels, and if there are any recommendations to add staff in a particular area. So with that being said, we will start with the Recreation Department and Tammy.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Commissioners. Good evening. My name is Tammy Cohen. I'm the Director of Recreation, for those of you who don't know me. Tonight I'm just going to go through some information on our staffing and our services, particular to the Recreation and Community Programming Department, which is obvious by the slide that you see up here in front of you. Just to start off, just to give a little bit of a high-level depiction, basically an illustration of our department, we consist essentially of 3 full-time personnel, with the director, program coordinator, administrative assistant, and a part-time recreation assistant. We also oversee approximately over 200 recreation volunteers, contracted services, part-time seasonal staff. You can also see we work directly, pretty directly, most closely with the Public Works Department on a lot of the parks, facilities issues, and/or projects, the other township departments, and we also oversee the Willows Mansion, the director and the event supervisors, and many of the operations there, as well as 2 internship programs that currently exist for both the Willows Mansion as well as our direct department. This shows you sort of a breakdown of what all of our staff members, our 4 staff members, have a key role in terms of their daily time concentrations and services as a breakdown. You can see in the chart there, it's obvious right away that from a programming standpoint, those are the shades there in pink, make up a large portion of what we do, essentially about 61% of what we do, with another 10% of that related to community support in terms of community operated programming that's not directly delivered under our department. So obviously programming being a huge part in what we do and what we concentrate our time on each day, with basically over 200 programs directly offered by our department. We're talking about
Tammy, can I ask you a question? Are you guys keeping timesheets now to keep track of that?
We have been charting our percentages of time in terms of how it's allocated. Again, about 200 programs over the course of the year that are directly offered by our department. We're talking about essentially over 200 staff, volunteers, part-time seasonal, contracted vendors that we work with. This also includes day-to-day administration, registration, reporting. We also conduct background checks on a lot of our personnel, and also validate and go through a certification process with them. Just an overview of what basically a total of what it looks like in terms of our annual participation. In the green there, you'll see on the stack chart is what our participation has looked like annually over the course of the last several years. Of course, with the top representing the community sports organizations, just to create that distinction. Also, this doesn't include any of the community programs that we support or we play a role in assisting in terms of the development. We also market all of our programs. We develop a seasonal brochure, which many of you are probably aware of and have seen in your mailboxes and on the internet. We update our website portions and facility portions, program portions of the website. We also play a role in development of the Township newsletter. And we also work with many organizations in the community to cross-promote one another, just to get the word out and spread the information to the community about all the great things that we do. We've seen in the last year, in 2011, by way of partnerships and sponsorships, they've about tripled from 2010 to 2011. We expect that number will continue to climb over the next couple years. And basically, in summary, with regards to programming here of the direct delivered programming offered by our department, it's our department's largest source of revenue, and the majority of the direct expenses are covered by the revenue that's generated from those programs. We're a gateway to a lot of the things that go on in the community, specifically for the community sports organizations. People call us when they're looking for their coach's name, left their glove at a field, and they need to reach out to us. They call us. They don't usually reach out directly to the organization. They actually reach out to our department. Radnor High School pool is another area. Folks look to us for that information, for recreational swim times and such, for being the resource of providing that information. The same goes with a lot of the community fundraisers and walks and such that take place, walks, runs, things that happen within the community, park cleanups, scout projects. We work directly with those folks, and we also work with the Public Works Department closely throughout that communication process. Another large component to what we do and where we concentrate our time, of course, are the parks and facilities. This is definitely our next largest area where we're spending our time. And overall, the administration of the athletic fields, of course, Radnor Activity Center at Sulpizio Gymnasium, the Willows Mansion, the tennis courts, etc. And we also work closely with the Public Works Department on special park projects and development and communications and coordination. We also oversee, as I mentioned before, the Willows Mansion. This is some of the things that those folks do in terms of planning and preparation for the events that take place there. And finally, of course, the committees, the boards that we interact with on a monthly basis, of course, our department development, special projects and reporting, time that we spend at the front desk for our administrative assistant, and of course support that we lend to other departments, particularly in the community development area where we're located here at the Township building. I just wanted to take a moment to reflect a little bit on some of the opportunities that our staff are very energized about that we have before us as a result of the reorganization for the Township. We've been able to concentrate really on the programming, fill gaps in programming, expand the number of events that we offer, fill gaps where needed, and of course increase community base and a wide variety of what we have available to everyone. We also see ability now to maximize the use of our facilities, specifically the Willows Mansion, of course Radnor Activity Center, increase partnerships, increase sponsorships as well. We see a lot of opportunity now in order to be able to do that with our staff settled into their roles. And also just overall working with the community in an approach to include them in the process and understand their needs and their interests to be able to offer the things that they would like to see within their community. We feel we're in a great position to be able to deliver all that right now. There are some potential challenges that we see. Of course, with the long-term vision of our facilities, we want to see planning that can parallel the programmatic planning as well as our understanding of how the facilities will be delivered in terms of their operations and their usage and their functionality. Establishing costs for some of our facilities is a key one that we've been working through in understanding costs for use of school district facilities, understanding costs that we anticipate may be charged for the athletic fields. A lot of those are key to understanding our future. And then overall balancing the ability to be able to deliver programming in a cost-effective way so we can continue to deliver those quality of life benefits to our residents. So at this time, in summary, really the Recreation and Community Programming Department is not looking for an increase in its staff. We feel we're adequately staffed where we are at this point in time. And I thank you for the ability to be able to deliver this presentation to you tonight.
Thank you.
With Public Works, being that the director is out with an accident here at the bridge, waiting on Pico with the gas line, we're going to skip and move his to the end. So if that's okay, we'll go ahead and move through this one to our next department, which I believe is Kevin.
Good evening. Kevin Kachansky, Director of Community Development. Wanted to go over the services and staffing levels for 2012. What we have is our organizational chart. The director at the top, two administrative assistants. On the left side of the bottom of the chart, we have our health officer and two of our code inspectors. On the right side of the chart, we have a proposed plans review and codes officer and two a rental housing inspector and a property maintenance inspector, and those last two were part of the 2012 budget. Our staff names with positions, myself as the director, we have Marianne and Vetta as our administrative assistants, Ray and Bill as our code officials, and Larry as our health officer. We have our rental housing inspectors to be determined, as well as our part-time property maintenance inspectors to be determined. And again, those were part of positions that were included in the 2012 budget, and then a proposed plan review codes officer moving forward. This graph shows a representation of our staffing levels over the last 9+ years, with 2012 showing the rental housing inspector that was included that we are going to be going out for advertising soon for. The red indicates the total department staff, and the yellow is the number of building inspectors. As you can see, we're maintaining 8 and 4 pretty consistently through 2008, and we hit some layoffs and reduction in staff levels, which brought us down, and we're slowly building back up to where we were previously. Administrative assistants, some of the responsibilities, some of the highlights. They're responsible for processing all permit applications, licenses, and payments. They processed right-to-know requests, approximately 1,200 last year, and at about a half hour per request, it's about 600 man-hours annually. They also are responsible for scanning all township documents into the Laserfish system, as well as assisting with the switchboard operations out front. Our health officer is responsible for issuing 194 food licenses last year, responded to 126 health-related issues that included 52 animal-related issues, 11 food-related issues, and 63 property maintenance-related issues. Serves as support to the health board, as well as is on call 24 hours, 7 days a week for emergencies. Our building code officials are responsible for doing all the plan review and inspections, and they did approximately 2,100 permits last year and corresponding 2,200 inspections as a result of those permits. Approximately 1,328 meetings with staff, architects, builders, and residents. They also serve on various boards, from design review to historical architectural review board, zoning hearing board, code appeals board, and rental housing appeals board. And they too are on call 24/7 to deal with emergencies. This graph shows the trend of permits issued from 2011 through 2003 to 2011. As you can see, we hit a high point in 2006. Permits started to drop off, and we were from 2009 through 2011 increasing that activity. This slide shows a comparison year-to-date from 2011 to 2012 from January through March. And as you can see, there's an uptick in the amount of activity the department is seeing from 2011 to 2012. Similarly with the occupancy issues, certificates of occupancy that were issued 2003 to 2011. And then similarly, 2011 to 2012 in that same time period. And again, we're seeing an increase in activity in the certificates of occupancy. Complaints logs 2003 to 2011. This does not necessarily represent the amount of complaints that we deal with. For a variety of factors, we start to streamline the process and get into quick methods of dealing with these, whether it's a phone call or an email to a builder, to a property owner, and don't necessarily have all the time to actually get these into the system to deal with. So we try to maximize our reactive time to deal with these issues. And a similar comparison, 2011 to 2012, the amount of complaints that we logged in that same period from last year to this year. As you can see, the activity is up there as well.
Kevin, is complaints seasonal?
It can be. It does vary as we get into the summer months, when you get into property maintenance with weeds growth and things like that. Generally in the wintertime you don't get to see that, although you do get a lot of trash complaints that are year-round. But you generally get your uptick in the spring into the summer months. Zoning hearing board applications, we had a total of 54 last year. Year-to-date in 2011, we had 6. This year, we're at 5. Design review board applications, we had a total of 90 last year, 17 in 2011 this time period, and we're already at 23 this year. In HARB applications, 27, 9 this time last year, and we're down slightly at 5. Rental housing licenses, there are 3,327 rental units in the township. That means we're sending out that number in letters. We had 156 follow-up notices for renewals, 75 final notices, and then we had to issue 45 citations for non-respondents. This is the number of inspections that we have historically done in the township for rental housing. You see that spike in 2009. We actually had 3 building inspectors working on that in a part-time, and then with the reductions in staff, we dropped off to 1 building inspector. The number in parentheses there are the number of inspectors that we had in each one of those years responding to those inspections. And in 2011, the 2+ is that we had a part-time for portion of the year doing assisting with the department workload. Major projects in 2012, as you can see, Villanova, we have 3 projects at Villanova. Agnes Irwin is currently under construction. Eastern University, there's 2 major renovation projects going on there. Here's some more additional projects that we're forecasting to see. These are not in yet, but these are ones that are currently under review or have received land development approval. So we expect that these to be submitting building permits shortly. Currently, we have 1,290 open building permits that we're currently dealing with. For 2012, some projections analysis. Our work in the first quarter is slightly outpacing that at the same time period last year. And with these recent plan submissions, we're starting to create some workload issues. And what that means is that we're unable to do plan reviews and inspections in a timely manner. It's loss of project follow-up and closeout, which means our project property files are not up to date. That affects our timing to respond to right-to-know requests, as well as preparing for court proceedings. And staff currently is in a reactive mode and not proactive, so a lot of those other issues that we'd like to deal with property maintenance and housing and things along that nature are not a priority. Although we'd like to get to them, we're dealing with the building permits, which are more time sensitive. So we're dealing with those first. This time last year, the department utilized a third-party service in the second half of 2011 at a total cost of $20,804 to help with the offset. It was about 308 hours. And if these projections continue in the pace that they're going, we're going to be looking at some additional in-house staffing in 2013. And the addition of the rental housing inspector that we spoke about earlier will help offset in the non-building areas with the rental inspections. Thank you.
All right, I think I'm next.
Yep.
I too would like to thank the commissioners for having this meeting tonight and giving us the opportunity. I appreciate it. Real briefly, taking a look at the Township's finance department. We house the accounting, financial reporting, budgeting, treasury management, financial controls, human resource and information technology for the Township. Basically, the reorganization that the Board of Commissioners approved last summer brought all of the internal service departments within the organization together within the finance department. So we primarily serve the other departments as well as serving the external stakeholders in terms of the financial and external financial reporting. The department is organized, again, breaking it down into the three divisions, the accounting, reporting, IT, and HR. We currently have 8 full-time positions and 3 part-time positions. One of the full-time positions at current is unfilled, and that's the assistant finance director's position, but all the other ones are filled. Stepping through some of the different positions within the department and some of their daily tasks, if you will, or responsibilities. And again, this is not intended to be all-inclusive, but rather to give you a general idea of what their day consists of in terms of what it is they're doing. We take a look at our revenue coordinator and our part-time cash manager. The revenue coordinator is responsible for the administration of over 17,000 accounts when you break it down between the real estate, sewer, rent, and Act 511. This person also works very closely with the elected treasurer in terms of the real estate tax collection. But basically what it breaks down to is we have one person that generates approximately $23–25 million for the township. And then on the part-time cash manager position, which is basically 3 days per week, she works primarily in the general ledger, posting a lot of the entries, doing the bank reconciliations, and transactional type activities. From the expenditure coordinator and then the purchasing and grants coordinator. The expenditure coordinator processes approximately 2,700 vendor checks per year. In addition to those vendor checks, this person also processes all the refunds that flow through the township, given the different collections that we have. As part of that, it results in approximately 2,000 vendors that this person works with. And they also serve as a critical link in the process of verifying the account codes and approving purchase orders as part of the electronic approval process. And then the purchasing and grants coordinator, in addition to administering all the open grants for the township, which we currently have 8 right now, this person also manages the process for the competitive bidding and RFPs, which last year was approximately 22. This person also has a lot of experience in the IT area, so by default, they also assist greatly with the department's IT issues. And then more and more, this person, as the right-to-know officer, this person spends more and more of their day dealing with the right-to-know law and making sure she works with the different departments and making sure that we're complying with the open records law. From the HR and the IT side, the HR department processes the payroll for all the active and retirees. The active payroll runs bi-weekly, and the retiree payroll runs once a month at the beginning of the month. They also oversee all the benefit management and the personnel management that goes along with the payroll and the active employees of the township. And they assist all the other departments and employees, for that matter, with questions and different things that come up. On the IT side, the township currently has 6 servers that house all the township's data. Making sure that those are up and running on a daily basis takes quite a bit of time. In addition, this person also makes sure that all the communications of the township are up and running, from long distance to just regular phone, as well as internet connectivity, cellular connectivity, and all of those items. And they also assist all the other departments in terms of help desk type questions and purchasing IT-related items. And taking a look at the department in terms of where we are today and where we see ourselves looking forward, using the SWOT analysis, take a look at the department's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. From the strengths aspect, by far the number one strength that we feel is the dedicated employees that we have within the department. It's something that I've been impressed with since the day I arrived here. It's just how flexible these employees are in terms of the ever-changing environment and their dedication to making sure the job gets done regardless of whatever time frame is necessary to get it done in. So that is something that I feel very good about, and I think the stakeholders of the community should feel confident in, is the dedicated employees within the department. Additionally, in terms of strengths, with the board's leadership last year establishing the permanent CARFAC committee, which has brought improved oversight and volunteer expertise within the community to assist in our operation. And one of the immediate benefits of that group is the improved internal controls within the department or within the township, segregation of duties, purchasing controls, journal entry approvals, reconciliation approvals. Some of the primary weaknesses as we see them as they exist today. Revenue resources, that one's highlighted. As I touched on, we have one revenue coordinator that is overseeing approximately 17,000 accounts and generating approximately $25 million. It's something that within the department we're taking a look at. Additionally, some of the areas that we feel that we're weak in is some business process inefficiencies where there's a lot of duplicate data entry. Basically every business process we have has at least one layer of duplicate entry. Some have more than one. And a lot of that deals with the software issue, being that we have a lot of disconnected software systems and also the data that we do have is unavailable and inflexible to come up with fast reporting. So reports that would normally, you would think would be relatively easy to put together, in our case takes a lot of time and staff time to put together, organize, and get in a format that's reportable. Some opportunities as we're taking a look at resolving some of the weaknesses and threats, which I'll get to in a moment. But taking a look at some possibilities in terms of outsourcing is the payroll and retiree processing that we currently do in-house, the possibility of a private vendor coming in and helping out there so we can focus more of that time on actual HR-related items. The Act 511 process, which right now, currently staff is receiving all those payments and forms, physically working with the treasurer and getting those to the bank, but we're data entering all that information into the system. So the possibility of looking for help there. And then on the IT side, the possibility of working with some of the software providers to offload the data housing. So we're not maintaining 6 servers. Perhaps some of that can be done off-site. Some of the other opportunities are improved long-term forecasting. We've built the framework for the forecast, which will help in terms of opportunities and helping the board make long-term decisions to see how things today, what that will impact the township's finances at least 5 years down the road, maybe more if we expand the forecast. And then there's some opportunities in terms of some government finance officers programs that will bring best practices into Radnor and the certifications and distinguished awards that come with that. Some of the threats that we see from our department, the primary one that I wanted to focus on here is the potential for lost revenues, being that with our current resources, applying the right amount of resource time to the Act 511 review and auditing, making sure that the compliance is there. It's something that the CARFAC is working with us on. We just want to look within the department to make sure that we're allocating enough staff time to collect what is due to the township. As well as I touched on a second ago with the right to know, that seems to be something that is growing and taking more and more staff time. So there's the possibility that if that continues along that trend, that the right to know itself could monopolize the one full-time person's job to make sure that we're complying with that law. It's not there yet, but it's more and more as time goes along. And then resource competition, and this is just being honest within ourselves, is knowing that finance software and other areas of our department are in competition for finite funding with other departments. So in summary, as we exist now, as we feel that we're adequately staffed once we get the assistant finance director's position filled. And on the short term and the midterm, our focus is going to be on making sure that we're allocating the appropriate amount of resources to make sure the Act 511 collections are where they need to be, to make sure we're maximizing the amount of revenue that is due the township. And then on the long term, our position is that we need to invest in some updated financial software to improve on some of the business processes and financial reporting for the township. So again, I thank you for the few minutes here tonight and appreciate you having the meeting.
Bill, can I just make a comment? I'm hearing that there's a lot of issues concerning IT, both on the financial software side, and also when I think of right-to-know requests, the first thing I think of is IT. If more records and more information were on the website, or if there was some way for people to access this information on their own, it would be reduce the amount of staff time. My only suggestion is that we may consider putting together a committee, just like we did with CARFAC and CBFAC, somewhat like a committee of IT people to help address some of these issues and give us more advice. If that makes sense to you.
If that's the direction the board would like to go. I will note that the CARFAC has broken themselves up into different working groups, and taking a look at the IT side, now they're looking at it from the finance perspective, but that's one of the objectives that they want to take a look at. So maybe they could be part of that committee.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bob? You want next? Chief? Okay.
Good evening, Commissioners. I appreciate your time. Before we start, I think it's important if we look out in this audience here, and the total number of officers we have right now is 38 police officers serving Radnor Township. You have 31 of them here tonight. And they're not here to ask for a raise. They're not here to ask for promotions. And I think it's abundantly clear what's in their minds right now. Starting out, the first slide I'd like to show you. Get the control. Just to give you an overview to put things in perspective, if you look at this graph, it shows that the last time an officer was hired in Radnor Township was in 2007. It was 5 years ago. Last time a lieutenant was promoted was in 2005, which was 7 years ago. Early 2012, you could see that we have a total of 38 police officers. Realistically, in the end of 2013, I have 8 officers that are eligible for retirement. Now, although none indicated that they would retire, they have that option if they choose, which could realistically bring this number down to 30 officers. Next. If you look at this graph, it shows how the numbers decreased since 2009, and we can go back even further. That shows a greater decrease that we'll see later on. But in 2009, we had 43 police officers. 2012, currently, we have 38. And again, the projected, if retirement kicks in, we can be down to 30 officers if nothing is done by 2013. Just to look at the eight years of manpower review, we had 48 officers in the year 2005, but yet 7 years later, we have 10 less than we had 7 years ago. But yet the responsibilities and the duties that my officers partake in is a lot more than they did 7 years ago, and I think we'd all agree to that. The next chart is the organizational chart as it appeared in 2005, and that's with a total of 48 officers. That included a deputy superintendent as well as 3 lieutenants. The yellow indicates that they're the current vacancies, but if you look a little closer, we also are missing a part-time meter enforcement officer, and where it says 7 crossing guards, we're actually short 1 crossing guard. To the far left of that chart, where it says investigations, it has 3 investigators. We used to have 4 investigators, but now we have 3. And we're all aware of the violent crime increase that we've been experiencing lately. To the far right of that chart, you see the traffic safety unit. There are 2 police officers that are assigned to the traffic safety unit. And I think I'm speaking bluntly when I say a week doesn't go by when we don't get requests from any of the respective commissioners or people in the township to ask us to look into some type of a traffic situation. And it's unrealistic that we can give the same quality level of service with 2 officers in a traffic safety unit, in addition to doing the motor carrier enforcement and just regular traffic enforcement, whether it's speeding, stoplights, or stop signs. The next chart shows the significant decrease, specifically not only in revenue, which is a byproduct, but in safety issues, because we're looking at a 7-year traffic citation review, traffic tickets that are issued. We have a 43.5% decrease compared to just last year in traffic citations that were issued. We're down to 7,150. The non-traffic review are citations that are issued for anything from faulty alarms, disorderly conduct, public drinking, things like that. And you can see we have close to a 28% decrease. And that is directly attributable to the lack of manpower available to perform these tasks. The 7-year incident review. These are the incidents that we will respond to regarding 911 calls. Now, if you look at that chart, you would say, well, you have less radio calls than you had in 2010. Well, in 2011, the reason there's a decrease is the lower priority calls are not being responded to. The supervisors on duty are basically wiping those calls out, and no service was rendered because those calls would sit on the screen long enough due to stacking of the priority of calls that no officers would ever respond. Just to do a manpower comparison with some of our neighboring police departments, and based on the national average in yellow and the actual number we have, as you can see, we have 38. The national average in comparison to other townships with similar terrain, population, calls for service, and so on, is about 78 police officers. And you can see how we compare to Lower Merion, Upper Merion, Tredyffrin, and so forth. When you do the manpower ratio per 1,000 residents, we basically have 1.23 police officers for every 1,000 Radnor residents, because right now we're hovering around 30,878 residents. Again, if you look at the comparisons between Tredyffrin, Newtown, Haverford, we have the lowest per 1,000 ratio of officers. Obviously, the numbers have a direct correlation to the services we provide. So we have the patrol unit, and we all basically know that patrol is the backbone of this department, 24-hour protection. My officers work 12-hour shifts. The majority of these officers you see, actually all but 4, are here on their own time right now because that's how important this is to them. They do vacant house checks, school visits, bank checks, bike patrol when we have the manpower, nighttime business checks, and I think it's commendable that the community really didn't see a decrease in the types of services my officers have been providing. And I hope they don't get penalized for that because they're doing more with less. The traffic safety unit that we mentioned is down to 2 officers and 1 ordinance enforcement officer that is responsible from everything from collecting our meters to going out on animal complaints, dragging deer off highway, you name it, and then that would be Billy Gallagher. We mentioned the Motor Carrier Safety Assistance Program. Again, that can generate a great deal of revenue for the township if our officers are available to do those functions when they're not doing traffic studies. The investigations unit, again, we currently have 3 detectives, and they've been burdened with not only investigating different crimes, but they're responsible for providing discovery to the district attorney's office, doing fingerprinting when people come in, and a whole host of other things. This is obviously the map of Radnor Township, and there was some debate on whether or not we should talk about this in a public forum, but after much debate, we decided that we wanted to give you a true and accurate depiction. The minimum manpower to ensure coverage of Radnor Township, as you can see, it's split up into 4 districts. It should be 4 police officers and 1 supervisor, should be the acceptable minimum level of manpower. Realistically, over 30% of the time, we have 3 police officers and 1 supervisor, which means on any given night, 1/4 of this township is not getting patrolled unless there's a call for service. Last year, we had 508 hours of extra duty details that went unfilled. These are people that call for a police officer to cover a lacrosse game, a sporting event, extra traffic control, or extra officer presence for whatever the case may be. 508 hours of that went unfilled because we didn't have enough officers to fill those details. Last year, that was at $93.13 an hour, of which a part of that, and I'll get to that in a second, would go to the township after the officers received their salary. This year, because of the increase in wages, that 508 hours of unfilled detail time, $39.48 an hour would have been extra revenue for the township, which means we lost around $20,000 in extra revenue by not being able to fill these details when people ask for extra duty. There are different studies depending on the one you want to look at. The one to the far left is the National Highway Traffic Safety Association allocation method. They use a formula to determine how many officers, the size of Radnor, based on population, terrain, calls for service, and so on, how many officers would be feasible. They recommend 80 officers. Then we use the International Association of Police Chiefs model, and Radnor Township, based on their theory, based on their formula, calls for 78 officers. The Northwestern University format calls for 56 officers. I've been in conversations with the township manager who's actively been supporting the police department through the past 2 years that he's been here by providing them with new weapons, and thanks to the Board of Commissioners for approving that, better radios, better uniforms, and we have 3 new cars coming. So he's been very supportive of the police department. We're not asking for the 56, which is the lowest calculation based on the 3 formulas. We're asking respectfully for 45, and even that number is low. Realistically, I would like to see the number 48, which is lower than the average that's recommended. I know because of the budget crisis that we faced and other issues and challenges that the township faced, that's not realistic that we're going to get that right away. And like the township manager stated to me in meetings, we would have to do that gradually and incrementally, and we understand that. The number 45 is what we would respectfully request, with the understanding that eventually, in years to come, we would get up to the number of 48. The level of services that I spoke about is very important. And one of the things I promised I would never do coming from Philadelphia is I would never try to compare police departments, because every police department is different. And one of the things I don't like, and I know Commissioner Spengler, you shared my sentiments too, is when you go to some of these meetings and people always threaten, yeah, but you know, God forbid if a kid gets hit at that intersection because you didn't do A, B, and C. And I never like to get into that, but I spent 30 years in Philadelphia. I had to go to 44 police funerals in 30 years. I never want to have to give one of these officers' families the flag that I had to fold off their coffin. Officer safety has to be number one before any service we provide to this community. Officer safety can never be sacrificed, and I know that you all agree with me on that point. There are other departments that do a tremendous job in Radnor Township, but police work is unique. I mentioned to the township manager, if one of my officers gets shot at one time, I think they just earned at least 10 years' salary. And with that, I just respectfully ask that you consider what we presented here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob?
We'll adjust for Public Works here. Bill will take us right through instead of flipping back. So Steve, you'll be able to pick up right from the beginning of your presentation.
Let me try that again.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So we're here with the Public Works and Engineering Departments. This first slide really just depicts what the collaborative environment we have here at the Township is and how we work with the other departments throughout the Township. And we all work together very well and in conjunction with each other. The Public Works employees are the department that most come into contact with the residents of Radnor Township. The dedicated and knowledgeable employees of the Public Works Department, along with all the other Township departments, provides quality of life services to our residents. I've been here going on 10 months, and Paul Badzick can attest to this, how very often I tell him how impressed I am with our people in Public Works. We do have very knowledgeable people. They are dedicated. They want to do the right thing, and they all do a very good job. I have been very impressed. Our mission and our goal, we'll just go right to our goal, is to provide all these services in a knowledgeable, dedicated, and courteous fashion, as efficiently as possible. Our job, why we're here. We are here to serve you, the residents of Radnor Township. The Public Works Department provides our services through the following 5 divisions: solid waste, highway, parks maintenance, sewer, and vehicle maintenance. Just so everybody understands, these divisions, they're not standalone groups. All the divisions interact and assist each group as needed. This is very evident in snow plowing, leaf collection, trash collection, and parks maintenance. There's a lot of different quantities associated with these slides. I'm not going to go through each one. I'm just going to try to give everybody an overview. Solid waste provides the following services to our 7,000 residences each week: trash pickup, recycling, brush pickup, rear yard pickup. To give you a visual, in 2011, the Solid Waste Division collected enough garbage to fill an NCAA regulation basketball court 50 feet high. We'll pay homage to March Madness. They do the open stops, the road debris, and trash cleanup. The Highway Division, again, there's a lot of different tasks in here. Some of the main things that they do is pothole repair, snow plowing, leaf collection, that includes composting at Skunk Hollow, storm sewer maintenance of our 57 miles of storm sewer and 1,800 inlets, all the regulatory signs, the traffic signals, street lights, street sweeping, cleaning the Wayne Business District. We'll go to the Parks Maintenance Division, which I think everybody can attest to how beautiful our parks are and how well they're maintained. These are the folks that cut, aerate, seed, fertilize, and trim all the athletic fields. We're fortunate here. We keep our athletic fields looking very nice. They're trimmed twice a week. They're cut twice a week. These folks also take care of the gateway enhancements, and the list goes on. Trash from all the parks, shrubbery, maintaining all the amenities. We groom our ball fields 2 times a week, 3 times a week during the heavy season. This is also our tree crew who removes trees from down trees from streets, sorry. The sewer division, small group, and they work on something that nobody ever sees. You just turn on your faucet and it goes away. Well, this is where it goes. They maintain 128 miles of sanitary sewer lines, 5 pump stations. They respond to after-hour emergencies pretty regularly. They, too, as well as parks maintenance, are an integral part of our snow, leaf collection, solid waste, and plowing operations. Vehicle maintenance. This group is responsible for taking care of all the vehicles within the township. Police, Public Works, Rec, Administration, Community Development. They are what keep us running in Public Works on a daily basis. Emergency response. A really large part of what the Public Works Department is emergency response. We're here to assist the police when they need us. We just had a little call out front tonight. During Hurricane Irene, we were here before, during, and after the storm. We cleared streets, we cleared inlets, we had backup generators on traffic signals. We provided extra days of trash collection for residents to dispose of their damaged property or spoiled food, yard waste. We're here for severe rainstorms. So 24/7, 365 days a year, our folks are on call and they do respond and come out and address these situations. We'll get into a little more into the staffing. Since 2006, the public works staffing level has been reduced by 25%. In 2011 alone, the Public Works Department staff was reduced by 11%. This includes eliminating 2 positions due to the cancellation of the Radnor School District grounds maintenance agreement. At the current staffing levels, the Public Works Department still maintains a high level of service regarding our core tasks: the solid waste, the trash pickup, recycling, the highway, the leaf collection, the composting, snow plowing, the sewer, and the parks maintenance. They're all at the same level we've had. These guys make it work every day with what we have. And Public Works is at its minimum staffing level for maintaining these core services. That being said, at today's levels, we are more reactive than proactive. Currently, and these are just a few of the certain tasks that we're not able to perform as timely or as frequently as we would like: curb replacement, special projects, whether it be pipe replacement, unforeseen projects, inlet repair, storm sewer maintenance and repair, rebuilding inlets, tree removals in the right-of-way. This is actually another meeting on June 12th, but staff performs this task where possible. Most is contracted out. We really need to address that whole program. Here's a look at the organizational hierarchy within the Public Works Department. You can see everybody and their tasks. And if you look at that bottom horizontal row, those are the groupings, those divisions you saw with the employees. You know, solid waste 21, highway 12, electrician 1, a custodian 1. We do our custodial work in-house. That gentleman takes care of this building, the Public Works building, Sulpizio Gym at the rack. Sewer 3, parks maintenance, that got cut out, but that's 13, and there's 2 in fleet maintenance. Engineering. Under the reorganization last year, the engineering department was merged into the Public Works Department. By using a contract engineer in conjunction with us, the cost savings were obtained and efficiencies were increased. We work together as a group on many issues, and it's very seamless now. Just a few of the things that go through the engineering department with support from Public Works: resident concerns, sanitary sewer. These are strictly engineering, the grading permits, the SALDO, subdivisional land development applications, shade tree commission, engineering reviews, highway occupancy permits, clearing permits, sewage enforcement, many, many, many inspections and capital projects. In this slide, I won't linger on it, but this just gives the totals of the different permits and reviews that were performed in 2011. And to reiterate what Mr. Kachansky and White had said, you'll see on the bottom right the processing the right-to-know requests. Those hours are starting to tally up, and they really do take a lot of time. This is the organizational hierarchy of the engineering department, Director of Public Works, the contract engineer for this year, which is Gilmore and Associates, and the engineering administrative assistant, Sue Jones. She's one of the first touch people that you would see at the counter. She's one of the people that deals with folks there for all their different permits. And I will tell you that the engineering and community development departments work very closely together in support and backing each other up, just like we work with the recreation department. Engineering inspector Doug Meter, he is our only inspector other than what's subsidized by Paul Basic and myself, and he is out doing inspections all day. So here's where we end up. And in order to maintain our current high levels of resident service, current staffing levels need to be kept in place. Any reductions in staff would correlate to a reduction in the level of service. At this time, the Public Works Department, including the Engineering Department, is not requesting any staffing increase for 2013 and beyond. Thank you from the Public Works and Engineering Department.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I want to thank you for allowing us to present this with programs and services. And as we've continued to go through the process in these various special meetings here with the Board of Commissioners, this is just another component of the overall picture of the township of where we sit at with staffing, programs, and services, and the recognition of the staff of what they have done over the past several years with a lot of the change that has taken place here and providing the level of services. To me, it's always a good measure to see how a staff performs during the difficult times, because really that's where you get a true measurement of the quality of staff that you have. And I think the staff has performed tremendously well with the various challenges that put in front of them. But now, looking at the programs and services where we are, and then the bigger picture as we keep adding on to this, this is just another segment of that information that we want to be able to provide the Board of Commissioners as we continue down this process of building, financial models in which the township can then look forward to 13 and then beyond as well.
Where do we stand right now in police staffing?
We are currently at 38 staff. We have 2 positions budgeted that we can fill. There is a civil service question that is being looked at with our labor council. So that would, if we're able to fill those positions this year, that would take us to 40. So then, based on what the superintendent and myself had looked at, I would increase to 45, and then putting a plan together of how we would bring that about. Because again, as we've spoken about, bringing it on overnight, it wouldn't happen. Is how we would phase this in, how it would impact the budget financially, of how we would get there too as well.
So you're looking at discussing coming up with a program this year to phase in 45 this year, or are you looking for next year's budget?
I think that's where we would be looking at 13 and beyond there to try to phase that in over a short period of time here of how we can get to 45. So it would be look at the five individual increase.
Is there any way we could phase in officers this year?
We could probably look at something like that, but I think we would have to look at the financial side of this too, and probably have some further conversations with the superintendent and staff of how we'd be able to try to bring that about.
Are the 2 officers that are budgeted already for 2012, would they help increase our staffing in the traffic, which is a revenue? We're missing revenue from years past from being short-staffed there.
I'll let
So
the superintendent address that one.
Yes, Commissioner, obviously, the traffic safety unit, I would realistically, and I know Sergeant Flanagan, I know he's here somewhere, he's been asking me, he would like to have 2 more officers go to that unit to bring it up to 4, because then he'd be able to do the traffic studies and the enforcement, which in turn would alleviate some of the work for the line squad. But the problem is those officers would have to come from the line squad to go to the traffic safety unit, so you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, so to speak.
But I guess my question is the 2 that we're hiring or in the process of hiring, those will come in at
They're going to be police officers assigned to patrol.
patrol.
To be realistic, If you had 2 officers, they have to go to patrol. You don't have the luxury of putting them in staff traffic. You need them in patrol, right?
And yes, and I would never put a new officer in patrol, in traffic anyway. It
Yeah.
would have to be somebody that's already there.
Yeah.
The only other thing I'd like to just mention too, like I spoke to the township manager, through attrition, we may be losing other officers. We would need to hire to get to that number we want to go to, but also backfill those ones if we lose anybody, because we can't afford to lose any more people as well.
Maybe if I can just address Commissioner Schaefer, your question is, the superintendent and myself had some conversation in regards to adding more into the traffic safety unit, but also, you look at revenue side being generated through there. I think if we had enforcement just in traffic signal violations on Lancaster Avenue, I think the revenue would see a significant increase just in that particular area, but also trying to see what we could do to specifically work in those particular areas in which we could see a revenue stream that could help offset those expenses. I think that might be as an offset of expenses based on those
Bob,
types of things.
I mean, one thing for me, before I accepted that, I would need to see the numbers on that. So if that means more research on your part.
Absolutely.
Because I've been told otherwise. So I would need to see how the citations would increase our revenue.
Sure, Commissioner, that's not a problem, because I'll just give you a small example. For Conestoga Road, if I put Mark Stanson or Ray Mattis out there, they'll bring back 20 to 25 speeding tickets in 2 hours.
Right. We receive a very small portion of that, don't we? Doesn't a sizable amount of that go to the county?
State.
Depending on the violation is one thing, how much we get as opposed to what goes to the state. But then there's also the big safety issue of,
Right.
which is the benefit that we're looking to get.
Well, Bob, how about the flow issue of hiring 2 officers and being ready to hire more officers if we lose any by attrition? Where do we stand on that?
We are going to be speaking with the Civil Service Commission to begin the testing process as well. And our hope would be that if we went through that process, I believe we would be looking sometime at fall.
Yes, sir. In
Before we
fact,
have a list.
we started that. I had Kevin Gallagher call Phil Deming. It would take about 3 months to give the written test and establish another list as well.
Bob, are we tied up somehow in a civil service dispute? I know we have Labor Council involved, and I don't want you to disclose anything that's confidential, but is that something that's really holding us up from hiring these 2 officers?
At this time it is, and that's something that as soon as I know that Labor Council, and not only from the township, has also reached out to the FOP Council, and I believe we should be hearing some type of feedback here hopefully this week that we'll be able to report back to the board on.
But we have people to hire?
That's correct. We have a list that's been done, so we have individuals that are ready to be hired if we get a green light.
Mr. Chairman, right now we have a list for lateral hires. We did that to avoid having to give the test to get experienced officers. So we have that list established of lateral hires. Township manager mandated also that we would give the written test to have another alternative way of hiring, especially in case there is an issue with this particular list.
Can I ask another question about the police presentation? You mentioned that there were lower priority 911 calls that weren't being addressed. Can you just give an example of what that would be?
Okay, sure.
Commissioner, some of the calls going to nursing homes for medical calls where there's a medical staff on premise. We've had to reduce our response to those. Barking dogs, they get put on a long waiting list, and when and if officers are available, they go. So it's really the quality of life concerns in neighborhoods that are being directly affected by this.
Thank you.
As long as we're on police, Chief, could you tell us a little bit about the Motor Carrier Safety Assistance Program?
Commissioner, if you don't mind, I'm going to refer that to Sergeant George Smith because that started under his watch.
Commissioner, that group is attached to traffic safety. There's 2 officers that are basically federal agents. They were trained, pardon me, by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration to enforce motor carrier violations. Tractor trailers, vehicles over 26,000 pounds. that traverse the township. Obviously, vehicles anywhere from 26,000 pounds to 80,000 pounds have a difficulty stopping quicker. And with the congestion of traffic in our neighborhoods and on our roadways, that's a serious problem. On top of it, you have gypsy tractor trailers out there, gypsy type commercial vehicles where they're not carrying all their required equipment. The federal government, when they took over the program of commercial vehicles, made it a high priority because it's so dangerous for the motoring public. And our officers, we're lucky enough to have 2 officers, but they don't get out enough because they have other things that are taking priority. So it's a very difficult time. But when they do go out there, they're enforcing medical record checks for the drivers, making sure they have all the safety gear. Just recently, they put 2 or 3 large vehicles out of service. One of them had an exhaust leak so large it could have knocked a driver out, made him unconscious while he was driving his rig. So they're able to have a huge impact on traffic safety for the motoring public. So it is something that this township needs, and hopefully we'll be able to exercise it actively.
Do they have to have probable cause in order to stop a driver, or do they just make arbitrary stops?
They can stop any motor vehicle, any commercial motor vehicle, and just do an inspection. They are hooked up with a federal database that will show when that truck was last inspected, and their reports are immediately uploaded to help the next jurisdiction know that this vehicle was either safety inspected, level 1, level 2, whatever it would have been. Yes, plus they have the ability to weigh them. The big thing with the motor vehicle, the commercial vehicles, are the brakes, the brake pads, the exhaust systems, and if the drivers are in the right class, along with their logbooks. When you get into the larger vehicles, they're only supposed to drive a certain period of time, but in order to increase their profit, they try and cook the books, basically. So our guys are pretty good with that.
And the two people that are assigned to this, it's not Officer Mattis and Officer Stanton, is it?
Yeah, yes, it is.
Okay,
sir.
so you're really depriving them from the other things that traffic safety must do.
Exactly. It's exactly my point, sir. And when they do have an 18-wheeler that's in violation, those fines are very significant in value as far as revenue.
I'll just make a brief comment, and this is maybe for the benefit of some of the officers that are here tonight. The commissioners have been having special meetings since the beginning of the year, and at 2 prior meetings we discussed OPEB, other post-employee benefits, and pension funding. And one of the issues that we're facing as a board is that we have greatly increased liabilities in funding the pension because of the stock market collapse back in 2007. And we also have a exponentially growing obligation to retirees under previous contracts and even under some of the current contract language. I'm not going to try to get into negotiating a contract, but just recognize that we have a revenue stream that we have our current costs, but we also have these long-term unfunded liabilities that we need to get a handle of before we can even afford to hire anyone new. So we're looking at that. I personally support the idea of hiring more officers. I personally see the need. I'm looking at the numbers. I mean, if you just do comparative analysis to prior years, it becomes very clear to me, at least, that it would be in our best interest to have more officers. But at the same time, I have this other issue where we have $45 million of OPEB and a couple million, $5 or $6 million of pension liability that's outstanding. So we have a real issue of funding, and we have to decide how we're going to do that. But ultimately, if you're wondering, why is this board not acting? Why aren't they hiring more officers? Well, we have a combination of issues having to do with the former manager, the loss of administrative staff, the loss of institutional knowledge. And during that period of time, from 2007 till now, we've seen this attrition occur in the police department. And we didn't have the mechanism to, go through the civil service proceedings, and we're just now getting caught up. But I feel that we're moving in the right direction. The new chief has been working very hard at making sure that we get moving in that direction. We started doing those interviews, but we really do have some this board has some really tough decisions to make moving forward. But the only thing I'll ask from all members, all staff members, all employees of the township is try to work with us any way you can moving forward, because when you see the liabilities that we're facing, you may start to realize how difficult it will be to move forward. I'm a prior member of a union, and my union benefits in my pension were cut recently. In fact, I have no medical benefits from my previous pension agreement. I'm not saying that's what I'm asking anyone to do. I'm just saying sometimes these issues are real. They don't go away. If we pretend they don't exist, they're going to get worse, and we're going to have a worse problem. Some municipalities in the country are filing bankruptcy. I'm not saying we're headed in that direction, but if we continue on this path, we may end up in a situation where we can't afford to hire new officers, we can't afford to pay pensions, we can't afford OPEB, and this is not a good time to be a board member, because we have some really tough decisions of how to address these financial issues. So I hope that we can hire more officers. I hope we can afford to do it now. I certainly support what's in the budget, and for next year's budget, I'm going to definitely support hiring more officers. But at the same time, I have to look at, and the board has to look at, how do we afford it without raising taxes, a huge amount of money. I think, tax increases are inevitable when you want to hire people and to maintain services. So that's something we have to accept. But we also have to accept the realities of these OPEB and pension costs. So I appreciate you listening. Again, this is a process that we're going to go through. I think it is, everything that's been said tonight in terms of officers makes a lot of sense to me. Thanks.
Any comments on Public Works from the commissioners?
I have one question for Bob. Bob, should we, and also for the other commissioners, would it be wise for us to form some kind of group that's in regular communication with our representatives in Harrisburg? Because some of the relief that we need would come from Harrisburg. And should we be identifying those things and communicating them, or be part of a group that communicates them to our legislators to see if we can get relief in Harrisburg?
Sure, we could. Sure, I think there's, specifically, we have our representatives. The question is, we could bring our representatives here to one of these sessions with the Board of Commissioners, invite them to be part of it, and see what options they can bring to us. So we could extend an invitation for the next meeting to invite our representatives to be here in attendance.
And we would have a list of
We
concerns?
can speak directly to them about
And you
what
would
they're
develop a list
working on.
of issues?
We can do that.
Any commissioner comment on community development?
I just want to ask a question on that point. Are you referring to legislative relief versus our legally mandated obligations to contribute versus the actual financial obligation? Because legislative relief is only a short-term fix. If you've got the actual financial obligation, whether they tell you don't have to fund the minimum amount this year, it doesn't go away. So I'm just trying to understand the thinking.
I think the legislative relief, are they going to create some type of funding to assist us? I would highly doubt that they would do that. But the interpretations and legislative corrective measures that could be had, that could be made, would be something for dialogue and consideration with them.
The thought that came to mind was we don't have the authority to charge a right-to-know request at what it costs us, correct?
Correct.
We can charge the copying cost, but not
Correct.
what it costs us.
Correct.
So what we're hearing is two departments telling us that might be a full-time person. If we could get the legislative authority to charge the cost, then that would relieve us of the tax burden to cover that cost.
And Chief, if we had the ability to do radar, would that save time and effort?
It probably would, but as you know, we're not allowed to use it.
No, but I mean, the state legislators could change that.
It would significantly help us, absolutely.
Yeah. So there are a number of issues that you could develop to talk about. Any commissioner comment, recreation, anything else, community development?
A question Community development. I mean, I think it's community development. It's more something that I didn't see than something that I saw. We had talked amongst ourselves about looking into an economic development officer or an economic development effort to try and bring businesses in and do increase our revenues that way. And I didn't see that anywhere in any of the departments. Is that off the table for now, or?
That was, based on the budget, we held that off until July, so we'll be beginning the process to advertise for that position. So yes, but that will be a component that.
Is that in community development or in finance, or?
That's under its own department that
Its own
reports directly to myself.
Okay.
And that would be something that we'd budgeted. We changed the budget allocation to where it would be only funded half.
So we still have that
Sure.
in our 2012 budget
That's correct.
at half
And we
the
plan on
amount.
pursuing that, correct.
I mean, I think that, I really support that idea, and I hope that we follow through with that and find, I think we could enjoy an increase in revenues from that effort.
Would that be somebody to develop private-public partnerships to take care of some of our programs, our costs, or is it something else?
No, I think that's more someone bringing businesses into Radnor, filling our vacant office space, filling our vacant, suites, so that we have more tax-paying entities making money here.
Maybe just to add to that, Commissioner Higgins, this would be for business retention, so that we'd actually try to retain the businesses we have, but then also business attraction, to go out and find that. But then also, too, is just to add to what Commissioner Schaefer said, to actually look at businesses instead of vacancies, to create opportunities for businesses to come here that actually makes sense for us. That would be definitely generate additional revenue for the township.
With regard to the partnerships, so Tammy Cohen mentioned that you do have a number of partnerships with private organizations. Are those financial arrangements or some other type?
They're more just from a promotional standpoint and/or within the delivery of programming. With some of those, we are working with some of the businesses in the township for monetary contributions towards some of our events, and then they participate then in those events as well. So that helps sustain that particular event that they're participating within.
Okay. Can I keep going? Kevin Kachansky. With regard to, how do you find examples out there of rental violations? Is it usually just citizens coming forward and asking for inspections?
Right now, we are in the mode of being reactive to complaints that we receive, whether people calling in, sending emails, or anonymous complaints. Our ordinance requires us to inspect, be on a 3-year inspection cycle. So every 3 years, we're in essence coming back to the same unit if we were staffed to do that. As you saw from some of the slides, even with 3 part-time inspectors, we were only able to achieve 800 inspections in that year. And given the amount that we have, we should be somewhere around 1,100 annually on a routine basis. And that's following up every year. We're going to set aside certain units that we go and just do the inspection. So that rental housing inspector that we had in the budget will be doing that full-time, is going through developing a plan of what rental units are going to be rented and inspected in a given year, and just perform those rentals. So right now we're being reactive. Once that inspector comes on, it'll be a proactive basis.
And with regard to building permits, how do you find out if there is a contractor that's come into the township and has gotten a contract with a homeowner to do work, and neither the homeowner nor the contractor has ever applied to the township for approval of the plans or for a permit to do the work? How do you police that kind of situation?
Twofold. One, we react to complaints that we receive. Neighbors are very vigilant in reporting activities. Even though they are permitted activities, we get a lot of complaints and inquiries from residents finding out, my neighbor's doing this. Is this permitted? Is this been approved? In some cases, they're not permitted, they're not approved. In most cases, though, they are. or just through our inspectors just driving around, going from call to call, keeping an eye out on what's happening. One of the things that was in the budget for 2012 that we're going to be bringing on board is a new software system that will enable our inspectors to have real-time communication with our database. So as they're driving down, they can actively pull up a map showing what current permits are in place in that area to be able to look at it right away from that standpoint. So that'll help with enforcement.
Do we still have an ordinance requirement that the permit be posted at the front of the property?
Yes.
Okay. Bill, could I ask you, is he here? Okay. This may run counter to you, Elaine, and your desire to keep businesses here and to attract new ones, but are we doing a decent job in collecting Act 511 taxes, or do we have no idea how much is out there that isn't being paid?
I think Bill will be able to answer that, but yes, I think there is a concern about if we are collecting the true number that we should be. And I think that's something that he has been working on. That's something that we'll be working on here shortly to bring some type of proposal to the Board of Commissioners of how we can do that. The CARFAG group is one that is focused on that as well, of trying to make sure we're maximizing those types of collections.
I know.
Maximizing meaning fair share, whatever they should be paying that we're.
I moved my office from Newtown Square here 3 years ago, and it was a couple of months before I realized, I woke up to the fact that I hadn't filed my return, and nobody from the township informed me, and so I'm sure that there are others like me. I suppose it would be out of the question to have a relationship with the landlords to get them to tell us whenever they turn over a unit, commercial unit, who's in there and what type of business is it, and make the person or make the tenant start reporting. Is that out of the question, do you think?
No, I don't think so. And I think as part of that, working with community development, the economic development person to know who's here, what businesses, are there, and be able to track those. Right now, there is no process where there's an overlap to be able to make sure that everyone across the board is collecting, but that's something we want to make sure we get into.
I hate to repeat the question.
Public comment? Any public comment?
Let me just make it brief. You can come on up. I'm just going to make a brief comment. I just want to thank staff for all their work on this report. It's very helpful, and it's going to help the board make some good decisions. So thank you and all the officers that came out tonight.
Hi, Mike Simmons from the Public Works. I just wanted to mention a couple things. First, to your comments about the pension and liability involved in it. 5 years ago, I came into a commissioners meeting when Bayshore was still here, after talking to the people in Pittsburgh regarding our pension and how it was only being funded at the minimum level. And when I brought it up at a meeting here, it was laughed away by Bayshore and the people here as though I didn't know what I was talking about at the time. I mean, I'm not the brightest guy in the world, but I understand when you pay your credit card bill, if you only pay the minimum payment, you're never going to get caught up. I just wanted to address that first. Second of all, when we talk about the issues of staffing, I mean, the police situation is a case where it is in the public works in the same way. When people disappear and you don't have them anymore and other people pick up the slack and you never think about it, then it becomes that situation where they're down to the amount of officers they are where they shouldn't be. At the garage, the 25%, as Steve says, I find that number to be low from having worked here long enough to see how many men and women that aren't here now. And second, and last of all, I wanted to say that we have always tried in the public works. We're the ones that have always tried to work to make things happen, to get things better. We're the ones that gave back a raise last year. We're the ones who chip in to our health care, the only department to do that. We're the ones to pay into our pension, where none of the other departments in this place do. So I wanted just to say that our guys and girls have always tried to do what's best and will in the future still try to work alongside. We understand the gravity of the situation and where we are and where we've been. And we're looking to get past that finally, because the heaviness has been on the back of this place for so long. It seems with Bob's leadership and the financial leadership we're getting now with Bill, that maybe we can finally get past that and start to move forward. And this guys come to work and enjoy doing their job without every day worrying about losing their job. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, just briefly, with regard to the pension contributions and the health care contributions, the public, Mr. Simmons is correct that the public works guys do contribute 5% toward the pension and are contributing toward health care. But the same rules hold true with all the non-union personnel too. So while it is all the rate guys, it's also the non-union personnel too. And according to the police collective bargaining agreement, they're contributing 3% toward the pension. So.
Sorry, I didn't say that.
Okay. Any other comments?
John Osborne here. You may correct me on this if I have it wrong, but a significant source of income for the township is the Act 511, and instead of having someone be a commercial development of business in the township, I think Brandywine Corporation is very much into that to fill their spaces. Our Lower Merion charges $1.50 per thousand gross for doing business in their township. Tredeffrin charges nothing. Radnor charges $3 per thousand gross. That is a handicap for people coming into the township. Now, if you look over at the corporate center of Brandywine, there's a lot of charity organizations in there who don't pay into Act 511. I don't believe, now I'm not sure about that, whether they pay or not. I don't know how they would have a profit or a gross. So I think that's one thing that's got to be considered if you're going to bring business in here. I think they're filling up their office spaces over there, but a lot of them are charities. Just thought that I'd get that out, and I may not have it all correct.
What's your point about Brandywine? I'm not getting that.
Well, Brandywine owns so much of the commercial space in our township, and they're very motivated to put tenants in there. And they go out and seek tenants. I mean, would be assisting them, basically. And do we need to assist Brandywine? That's the point I'm making.
I think we'll assist Brandywine. If they don't need us, fine, but there are plenty of other areas that we can look at. But we'll be reviewing all that. Again, thank you to the staff for putting this together. Thank you for the police office for attending. We appreciate all your input as we continue trying to put things together for this year and for next year, and to continue to look at our expenses and our revenues. Thank you all for coming. Meeting's adjourned.